Hello. Thank you all for coming. So not many tonight, but I see some pretty important people here, though. So quality over quantity, right, Miss Penn?
There you go.
I'll blame it on the summertime. So for those of you your first time here, our mission is to engage and empower young professionals by creating a vibrant space where we offer opportunities to grow their potential, network, gain visibility, and give back to the community. Our vision to do that is to be impactful and relevant as economic, social, and civic leaders in our community. So I want to thank everybody for supporting us tonight. Our sponsor, Mega Workplace, Ms. Pan, and Mr. George. So we're standing in kind of the crown jewel so far of economic development, public and private partnership in Lake County. So with that, if you want to further engage with us as an experienced professional, thank you for coming in a mentorship mentality and wanting to hear who I'd like to call my friend. I think I might owe him a drink or a meal before that, so that's why we got you a gift basket. So he's the Director of Faculty Development at Lake Sumter State College, taking an intrepid leap toward making Lake County on the map in front of the other state colleges in Florida, starting AI curriculum and embedding AI in our courses and getting the next generation of higher ed students in Lake and Sumter County to ethically use AI. And he's been gracious enough to talk to the small business community twice in the last year. So he won't disappoint, and I won't take any more of your time. Let me present you Dr. Justin Greathouse.
Thank you, Monty. Those are lofty expectations I'm sure to not meet. So my name is Justin Greathouse, and I do serve Lake Sumter State College as the role of faculty development, director of faculty development. I'm really humbled to be here. This is a really beautiful space, and it's my first time being here, so I'm very grateful to be here with you guys this evening. To kind of set some expectations for what I hope to speak about is kind of a novice approach to the user end of AI, and kind of hopefully spark some ideas on how you might consume AI in the typical terms that we're talking about now with large language models or image generation, video generation, etc. But also how your client base might also be thinking about AI or utilizing and practicing with AI. A couple of things to consider is, to Monty's point, I am a small piece of a very ambitious team at the college, and it is I'm very curious as a person. I like to learn as a person, and so it was important to me to learn how to utilize AI, and to, obviously coming from the higher ed viewpoint, how do I make sure that our faculty are prepared for our students utilizing AI, and make sure that we are still offering rigorous coursework, and that we are not succumbing to some of the downfalls of AI, if you want to call them downfalls, but also how we make sure that our faculty are prepared to utilize AI to transform the way that we teach, so the way that our students also learn. So we're fortunate to have a president that is all on board with, yes, let's make sure that we innovate, let's make sure that we lead. And I can say that we have gained approval to start an AI program. Dr. Chris Sargent will be heading that up, and that just happened last week. So we're very, very excited on what we can continue to observe. We want to make sure that Lake County, Sumter County, that we continue to, the students that are constituent students, that are constituent businesses, that we continue to offer the most robust and meaningful education. So I'm just super proud of the team that I get to be part of at Lake Sumter State College. We are also the fastest growing college out of the 28 Florida State colleges. We're the fastest growing. So there's a lot going on in our little tiny college. It's not going to be little tiny for very much longer. So we'll go ahead and begin, and I will use it quicker to the best of my abilities. I'm very informal, so I'm going to kind of point out some stuff and going along the way, but definitely I want to invite you all as business leaders, as folks that kind of dictate really the constituents that I serve in the community. If you've got input, if you've got ideas, if you've got questions along the way, please also make sure that you are taking this time to make this part of a collaborative discussion here. Because that's how I continue to learn, is by hearing other people and what they need, and then I take that back to the college and we continue on our work. So I'm going to attempt to click play somewhere over there. There we go. How about again? There we go. So me, I already talked a little bit about me. This was a service dog. He became my buddy. We had a service dog come to our Four Corners campus. It's our newest campus. And he was hanging out with students for the day, and so I couldn't resist a quick selfie with the puppers. I also am an adjunct faculty at 2 other institutions, not just Lake Sumter State College. I also serve for Grand Canyon University for their College of Education and their College of Science. I teach chemistry and I teach teachers that want to be principals. And I also work for Valencia College as an adjunct as well. I'm a former K-12 teacher. I taught science for middle school and high school, and I actually liked the middle school. That was my favorite grade to teach. They're super stinky and sarcastic, and most days so am I. So it's fine. We got along. I also did the principalship thing. I visited every classroom every single day and blessed those kindergarten teachers because I started my day with them every day, and I never got out of those classrooms without having boogers on my pants because they just come up and do the thing where they hug you and they wipe their nose, and bless those teachers because they're not my favorite kids. Before education, I was a district training manager, so before I made a new career change over a decade ago, I was a training manager where I wrote curriculum on how to improve your profit and loss and then deliver that. And I'm always curious, so we talked about that. I'm always wanting to know more and learn more about people and about things, and so here we are. I'm gonna try to reach that. There we go. So what is generative AI? And I'm going to start using the term kind of ChatGPT very loosely and as an all-encompassing term, even though ChatGPT is a brand. It was built by a company called OpenAI. OpenAI really did a lot of the groundwork for generative AI. They built this large language model, so they scoured a lot of documents, if you will, in the way that humans talk, in the way that humans speak to each other, in many different tones. So it could be very formal tones with literature, with research. It could be very informal, like on Twitter conversations. And they scoured the internet and built a system that talks and mimics the way humans talk. It's important to note that it's a large language model. It is not a large logic model. It does not know what it is saying. It will sound like it does because it lies with great authority. You will think it knows what it's talking about because of the way it talks to you. It has no idea. It's similar to predicted text on your iPhone or your phone. So if you start texting with someone and then you start hitting that middle button, it tries to predict what it thinks is the next most likely word in a human's conversation. Only the large language model does a much better job. It can produce in requested formats, and this is beginning to get even more robust. So for example, you can ask it to write code for you, and it will write code. If you want it to write Python, it can do that. If you want it to write HTML, it can do that. It can do some very different things at this point. It can write in many different languages, not just English that you and I are probably thinking. It's capable of iterative outputs, so you can ask it to, now change this, I don't like this tone, I want you to act as a doctor of something. I want you to act as a 5-year-old. I want you to have a conversation with a 5-year-old. So it will act as whatever role you tell it. If you want it to act as Shakespeare, it can do that and start speaking like Shakespeare would speak. But you can also have it continue a conversation with you and go back and forth, which is great in higher education because we can use it as a personal tutor. We can have the chatbot start to have a conversation, diagnose the student. What don't you know about ideal gas laws? And then it can diagnose based on some questioning what the student replies, and then say, okay, we're going to work on this problem. And then the chatbot starts working through the problem. Doesn't give the answer, but it says, here, what do you think you do next? Yes, that's right. No, it's not. Try this. Think about that. So it's capable of continuing a conversation. OpenAI also built something called DALL-E, which is an image generator. So it's text to image. You have an idea in your head. I want a mountain scene with a bunch of cacti. Okay, it's going to produce that for you. Now, there's many other brands that do these things, but OpenAI was kind of the leading edge of doing most of these things. They developed their model, ChatGPT and DALL-E, and everybody else has kind of either taken that idea and expanded upon it, or they have taken advantage of OpenAI and said, we're going to partner with you, here's some money, and let's do business together. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Some ethical implications. I'm going to kind of frame this in some of your work, but also frame it from what we're trying to do as servants of the community, and we are teaching your future workforce. We want to make sure that we are working ethically through AI, because it is a fantastic tool, especially when you're already a subject matter expert and you're trying to construct something, a presentation, an idea, a report. You already have the information that would normally take you 2-3 hours to write it all out, type it all out, but this can produce it for you in mere seconds, and then all you have to do is read through and edit it. But if you don't know that information and you rely on AI to just generate it for you, you have no basis on if it's correct or not, because again, it's a language model, not a logic model, and it applies with great authority. So we're really working from the get-go in our introductory courses at Lake Sumter. That is something that we have begun instituting. Really last year, it was over a year ago at this point, where we said we need to start talking about AI. We need to intentionally teach students how to utilize AI and how to do so ethically. So at first there was hesitation in higher education, right? Because it's scary. Like, well, AI just teaches you, I don't need to teach you anymore. Well, if I'm an artist and I draw and this is my thing and now it can just generate an image for you, I'm not needed anymore. So there was a lot of fear at first. Like, I'm running from this, I resist this, but we can't run from it and we can't resist it. It's not something you can just wait for the wind to blow and it changes and we don't utilize AI anymore. Instead, we have to recognize that it is a tool. That's all that it is at this point, is it is a tool. We've done this before with the internet, with calculators, etc. So it's a tool that we begin to embrace. It doesn't necessarily take the place of a job, but as we've talked about, and as we keep saying at Lake Sumter State College, AI is not going to take your job, but a person with skills in AI is going to take your job if you don't learn how to utilize AI, because you'll just be less productive. You won't have those tools. It's like going through the card catalog to find the literature that you're looking for, rather than just searching the internet. Somebody's going to be more productive than you. We have to recognize bias. So again, AI is going to have great bias because it has learned from humans, and we have great bias. It's just who we are, it's what we do, it's how we spend less calories and process information very, very quickly. AI has a lot of bias, and so you can ask it to create an image of somebody from Wisconsin, and there's these great memes out there, and they had big old cheese heads, and then somebody from Florida, they look like a typical tourist, and they've got their camera out, and so it had bias of what it thinks these people should look like, based off of what it has learned by scouring sources over and over. It keeps seeing the same thing over and over, and it thinks this must be true, even if it's not true. So again, we have to consider it as a tool. There's a lot of discussion about copyright. So who owns the copyright for these things that are produced by large language models? Because a human didn't produce them, so who owns it? There's a lot of discussion, and Europe has kind of led the way in setting some groundwork for how AI can be used, when it's considered to be threatening if it's used. In the US, we have a lot of litigation going on. We don't have court cases that have been settled quite yet. Kind of going back to what that looks like, how Europe is they're tiptoeing into AI a little bit more so than maybe we are here in America. Apple, for example, is expected to roll out AI in their next shipment of iPhones, etc., the next iteration of iOS. But they are expected to not roll that option out in the European market yet because they don't quite know what that landscape looks like and they don't want to be fined a lot of money. So that's just kind of the discussion out there. Nothing is official, but that's kind of the discussion. We have court cases right now where Disney's worried about their copyright because many of these instances you can go into some of these image generating programs and say, make me Mickey Mouse in the middle of Main Street, but Main Street is post-apocalyptic, and it will do that. But now they're like, that's our Main Street and that's our Mickey Mouse, and so you've infringed upon us, but there's nothing settled in that because the person didn't actually create it. So there's a lot of court cases right now that's unsettled. Citing AI, what we have started to do is, at the higher education levels, recognize that AI is a great tool, it's a great starting point. It is really great at having arguments and dialogue with you. But we ask our students to cite it as they would if they searched any other research article and recognize that, yes, I used a chatbot and here's the information I used, or here's my first document that it that it produced for me as my rough draft, etc. So we start with AI and making sure that we're utilizing citations and recognizing that a human did not create all of this. And our instructors are doing the same thing. Our instructors are producing artifacts in their course and their content. They always cite this was produced in conjunction with artificial intelligence and then give an API or MLA citation at the bottom. So we're trying to be the model for what we expect our students to do. It's really, really good at, again, first drafts. It won't give you a perfect draft in your tone and your voice, etc., but it's going to give you a really great starting point that, again, as the subject matter expert, you don't have to spend all that time writing it out, and instead, you can just go back through and edit and say, here's the few changes I want to make, and now my product is good enough. And refine your own work. So, again, these image generation, we'll talk about some other things that it can do for you. You can take certain pieces of it and say, just want this change, and it can help speed up your work as well. If you're into image generation, if you're into language generation, anything that you need to produce. Again, more limitations. It lies with great confidence, and it will tell you crazy stuff. We call those hallucinations because they're not true. It's untrue. So it's hallucinating. But to somebody that doesn't have a lot of subject matter expertise, they take that as factual because they're used to typing in something into Google and seeing a response that is true and valid. And so they take that same skill set and try to apply it to AI, and that's where trouble starts. So we have to recognize that it lies with great confidence. It has no idea what it is saying, but it will say it with authority because it thinks that it is true. It continues to say this is the next most logical word, the next most logical word. When it writes code, and if it makes a mistake, you can tell it that it made a mistake, and here's what's not being produced correctly. And it will say, I apologize, here's a new version, and it will try to correct itself. And sometimes they do a really good job, especially a system called Claude from Anthropic does a really good job of coding and recognizing if it makes an error. But it still is kind of just guessing. It says, okay, that wasn't the right word, so I'm going to run through this again, and maybe this is the right word. So it's just kind of guessing at what the next most logical code would be, or the next most logical word would be. Again, exceptional amounts of bias. A lot of these professional companies, especially the ones that are tied into OpenAI, are very worried about their bias, and so they started putting some hindrance on what can be produced. And so if you ask it, I'm very hungry, is it okay to steal a loaf of bread? And it will say, I can't tell you to steal a loaf of bread, I'm not here to make your own decisions, but instead it's going to now link you to resources for food insecurity and try to help you with those kind of resources. So getting better at recognizing things that could potentially be harmful or things that would produce bias, and then trying to scale that back a little bit. But there was probably about 3 months ago, Google Bard/Gemini was being piloted, and they were producing images, and they couldn't get anybody to produce a white person, and so that was their big freak out because they had gone so far about in one direction about producing bias that they couldn't get it to produce something that would look more literal. So again, these are all kind of trying to be fine-tuned. We're in such the very beginning of all these great tools. Even though they are being fine-tuned very quickly, it's still important to recognize that there is bias, and it still is important to recognize that this is the worst it's ever going to be. It is not really good at explaining complicated processes, and we have to recognize that your output that you're going to get from it is only as good as the prompt or the input that you get in. So the most important thing that a practitioner can do, especially a novice, is utilize it more, because you start to recognize there are certain frameworks for prompting artificial intelligence or LLMs to give you the response you're looking for. It needs to know what you're thinking in your brain before it can actually produce what you're trying to envision. And if you ask it to describe a really complicated process, it's going to mess up, because again, it is trying to predict the next most correct word, and if it's really complicated, it doesn't do that very well. But if you ask it to take a very complicated process and trim it down to something simple, it does that exceptionally well. You want to take ideal gas laws and explain it to a 5-year-old, it's going to give you analogies, and it's going to give you all these great things like, oh, I get it now. You feel really good about yourself. Trust me, I do this. It's like, oh, I'm smart. But it doesn't take you to do the reverse. It doesn't take something that is complicated and explain it to you in a complicated way. Most importantly, though, is it lacks a human touch, and this becomes very evident very quickly. And I'll show you an example here in just a second, but it's something to not lose sight of, especially when you're dealing with people. And we deal with students where I'm at. There's a huge range in age. We have Gen Alpha now being enrolled as our dual enrollment students, And we have boomers that are students. So there's this huge, huge gap. And no matter where they are in that range, it's really obvious that there's a lack of human touch when AI does the talking. And so eventually, humans come back to humans because they want to feel that connection and that affiliation. What I tend to teach my students is this Slater model, which I'm not going to bore you too much with, but the Slater model is simply an output model. So we teach them about the kind of tone we want and the output that we want and the length of the output that we want. So we teach them how to prompt the input. And then our students are able to start utilizing and practicing with AI, recognizing some of those limitations. For this guy here, we actually did this in one of my pilot classrooms. I was piloting this work with them, and for my students, I said, okay, so let's ask an image generator, what does a typical college student look like? So we said, show me a college student, and they came up with this right here. And so we named this kid Slater because he's based off of our Slater model, the prompting model. Now that was over a year ago, so when we started doing this, with this group, it would have been, I guess, May of last year. So he's just a little over a year old. Now they're way better. The images are way better, way more detailed. We turned him into a chatbot, and so you can actually create chatbots for free. You can post them on your website, etc., and they can learn from your website. They can learn from PDF documents that you want to input and say only answer questions related to this document. And so a user can type into the chatbot, tell me about this, tell me about that, does your company offer this? And the chatbot will reply based on the input, so either your website or the PDF document. So we created a tutor in my class, and my students were allowed to use the tutor. Again, we're being ethical, we're being very open about what we're doing, etc. So it was a reciprocal learning opportunity for me. How would students utilize this? Poe.com is where I did this at, and on Poe.com you can actually see what was asked of the chatbot and how it replied. So you can actually go through and see the conversation. Which also was great for me as a practitioner. I can see where my students are not understanding and they're needing to get tutoring. So I know I have another source of information. How do I change my instructional practice? So what's out there? And actually, I don't know if did that show up as a video by chance? Does not? Okay, no worries. He might be later. Does that show up as a video by chance? Boo! Okay. So, looks like we got it lost in translation right here.
I can find your old one for later.
Okay. There's a few things that are out there currently. So, depends on what your need is, but I would venture to say that nobody is an expert on any of these tools right now because there's just too many and they just keep coming out. So different companies are hyper-focused on one area and then they produce a great tool. And so you've got to learn that. But now while you're learning that, somebody else can come out with another tool. My favorite right now is watching OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, and Claude kind of leapfrog each other and what they're capable of doing. I'm not really worrying about getting too trained in any of them because it will become moot in just about a month, and then I'm going to have like new thing. Oh, let's do this. So I kind of keep superficial tabs on. I've got a niche for this, I've got a niche for that, and I keep working with these same tools while also just kind of tiddling around these other ones that are coming about. But Bard and Gemini is by Google, and they are behind currently. Kind of, I'll say behind very loosely, but they're not as robust or as utilized is the better word for it as some other tools that we'll talk about. But they're working on it, and they have really big plans. And so what's pictured there is actually the start of a video. And in this video, what happens is Bard, or Gemini, is utilizing a webcam. And the webcam is just analyzing a desktop. And so the gentleman takes a Post-it note, and he writes just a little scribble. And then they ask, well, what do you see? And so Bard starts to analyze it and says, I think that's water, or drawing of water. And they make a couple more loops, and then he's like, well, I think it's a bird, maybe a duck. And then he starts asking, okay, well, does the duck, or does the duck sink or float? And then they determine, well, the duck would be a rubber duck, so it's going to float. So it's the camera is picking up optics, which is then translating into image and video. Excuse me, that the processor then is thinking about what does this relate or look like, and all the other images and videos out there on the internet that I've never looked at before. Now what do I think it is? And then coming back, and it's instantaneous conversation, back and forth. There's no lag, there's no delay. It is processing all this information in real time. And it's astounding. And it's not released to the public yet. It's only kind of in its beta mode, but they're demonstrating this live, and it's capable of doing these things. Luma Labs is an AI video platform, and it's just released to the public. It's completely free. So Luma Labs is completely free. What you do is you go in there and you type in, you just link into your Google account, whatever, but you type in text to video. So I asked it to show me flying over Las Vegas at night with the strip visible. And it did. Now it's not 100% accurate, but you definitely could tell that you are flying into Las Vegas or a major metropolitan city overnight. There's a lot of neon going on under one strip of area. And then I said, okay, show me flying into San Francisco, and I want to see the Golden Gate Bridge visible. And it did that. And I said, show me 3 puppies wrestling with saguaro cactus. And then it did that. So it does some crazy things that you just text a video. It runs a little bit slow, but it's completely free. I say a little bit slow, it's up like 90 seconds. I'm really impatient. Really. So it comes back with these videos, and the videos are lasting 15 to 10 seconds. We can go for longer if I decided that I wanted to give them a couple bucks a month. I could make 60-second videos, but I just want to see what the free tools can do. Because for me, this is B-roll footage, because I'm an instructional designer, and I know that Gen Alpha wants video. They want to learn from video. They want it to be under 60 seconds. And so I need to give them content that is under 60 seconds. Okay, I've learned. Ready to move on. And this is great B-roll footage for me. So now I've got some background stuff that I can start tinkering with and putting this into new learning opportunities. Sora is another one. Sora is hosted by Google, and Sora is going to be able to, again, do the same thing, create 60-second videos, text to video. Copilot is really amazing as far as a useful office tool and an everyday tool. And I'll give you an example in just a second. But you can generate images, you can take images, excuse me, and reverse engineer them, if you will. Tell me about this based on an image. This is another partnership with OpenAI or ChatGPT, and so Microsoft said, we've lost this game, so you can't beat them, join them, and so they paid OpenAI a bunch of money and said, let's partner, we want to utilize your tools for our Copilot. Copilot now is able to analyze Excel spreadsheets, analyze Word documents. It's able to have Teams meetings. Like I have Teams meetings with several different groups because I serve a lot of different constituents at the college, not just faculty. It records my entire meeting for me, and then it makes an analysis as we're 5 minutes left. It gives me a warning, says you have 5 minutes left, you want to recap the meeting. And then it takes everybody that's talked in there and talked about recapping it, but then also lists the action items. We said we're going to do this, we said we're going to do that. So we can recap and start delegating right there in real time. I don't have to have somebody worrying about taking minutes the entire time anymore. It's done in real time for me. It's amazing. At least for me, it's amazing because I spent a lot of time trying to go, what did we just talk about? It'll generate emails for you, which I don't do because, again, I like the human touch. But I also recognize that, again, I'm going to start dealing with instructors, faculty that are dealing with Gen Alpha, and they don't want a diatribe in an email or a classroom announcement. It better be in a few sentences. It's really good at summarizing what I type out and making it much more succinct and digestible. And most of that is free, that Copilot tool. So just as an example, I said I'd show you an example, but I went to DG Donuts, if you've never heard of them. They're a locally owned shop. They're down on the 50 there, Colonial, down more towards our South Lake area. And so I just took a picture of the box, and I said, tell me about this. And Copilot, I uploaded the photo, said, tell me about this. And it came back and said, this appears to be DG Donuts. And then it took the DG Donuts and said, they're a locally owned shop, they create artisan donuts, here's their hours, here's their contact information, here's their location. And then at the end, it gave me all the resources on where it found that information. It went to Yelp, it went through Uber Eats, it went to their actual website, and it went through some blog, and it had all this information, but it linked me to where it found this. So now we went back to earlier how we were talking about how much bias is out there and it lies with great authority. It may have lied to me, but it's now telling me where it got the lies from. So at least I can go verify what it's telling me, like, is this true? What's also cool about Copilot is when it's done talking to me, at the end, it starts to provide some suggested conversation continuers, if you will. So it says, do you want to know more? Do you want to see their menu? Those kind of things. And so I'm like, yeah, I want to see their menu because the donut sounds really stinking good right now. So I click the button, and it takes me to their website and shows me their menu options for the week. And it also says, would you like Uber Eats to deliver this? And it's going to link me to Uber Eats if I click the next thing. I'm like, man, this is cool. No work. I can scan the box and I've got donuts coming to me. But also what's neat as I was exploring this is I was down in Disney Springs for the Lego store. And I'm like, cool, this is a really cool Homer Simpson Lego set. And I took a picture. And I said, tell me about this, because I was trying to figure out what can it do yet. And it comes back and it tells me the Lego model number. And then it says it's currently on sale at Amazon for this, and Target for this, and the Lego company for this. It shopped and compared prices for me right there, which was crazy. Because now I'm like, oh man, I could do this everywhere. But in real time, this is all happening in real time, and it's taking me less than 30 seconds to analyze these images. So faculty had started using this. This is all the mobile app, so we're doing this within our pockets here. Faculty started doing this with, they're looking at textbooks and resources and things that they're looking at. They're just taking pictures, and it's telling them how to order it. It's telling them where they can find it online for free already. They obviously are able to lesson plan with Copilot. Since we have an affiliate agreement with Microsoft, or a Microsoft school, anything that we're putting into Copilot here, that information is sequestered. So it is not utilizing our data to learn from, and it doesn't continue having that data housed somewhere. So we are less worried about student privacy, about FERPA, those kind of things, because again, it is not being used in the learning process for these models. It was just having this in-house conversation with this sequestered piece. At least that's kind of the claim or idea. So we are taking their word for it and going with that. Those are again things we've also taught our faculty to be very cognizant about. What are you putting into AI? Because you might be putting into students' work, and now that becomes part of the learning process, and now they have to worry about, so if I go to reproduce this later, parts of this later, is this going to come up as flag, those kind of things. So we're all learning as we go at the same time. But Copilot, most of these tools are completely free, and so you can download the Copilot app on your phone and utilize it. If you already have an agreement, or your business already has an agreement with Microsoft, chances are you're going to get more benefits because you already have that 365 agreement. Pika Labs, this isn't a short video generator. In this case, it's all text generation. It will do many different styles. So if you want, I'll go back to Copilot in just a second because it can do the same thing, but Pika's just another option. They kind of really rolled out in the past 6 months. They went from just being a Discord kind of beta testing to now an official platform. They can do many different styles. Anime style, if you wanted something that's more Pixar style, it can view these things for you. If you start analyzing, you'll see that there's clearly errors in there. You're like, yeah, it's AI generated. But it's, again, great B-roll footage. It's for us. Again, we take these characters and we just have goofy fun with them, but they become part of our instructional practices. I'm teaching faculty, and they're watching this little guy with an AI-generated voice talk to them. It's much more fun than having me talk to them. So he becomes part of our instructional routine, just as earlier we had Slater back here. Slater is part of our classroom culture. So what actually happens there, the video's not playing, but he talks to the class. He's part of the introductory to the class. So he introduces himself as Slater and tells them that he's the class tutor, and tells them that he's available 24/7. All they have to do is start a conversation with him in the chat box below, and he'll respond anytime of day. But he also has the idea of, I'm just the chat bot. So after we talk, you're going to make sure that you verify with your instructor, Dr. G, to make sure that what I told you was correct. So we have that caveat in there that it's still just a language model, and he'll lie to you. But for the most part, he's really good at what he talks about. When I do faculty development, I've started to incorporate, again, AI-generated voices as well. I don't talk because I have a very nasally voice, and I don't like to hear myself. So instead, I have somebody with an AI-generated voice do the entire script for me, and they do all of the talking, which is great because they can set the tone with their voice of what I'm trying to get across to my audience, whatever my audience might be for that given presentation. But what's also neat is they don't have the and the stuttering. And if I need to go back and change information, I don't have to re-record myself the entire time saying it. All I do is retype the script, or I just take out 1 or 2 words and change the 1 or 2 words in the script and run the voiceover again, and it's done for me in 5 seconds. Upload that audio over my video, and I'm good to go. Save myself an awful lot of time. So I'm gonna guess that the Sora videos didn't come out. Lost in translation, which is totally okay. But again, these were videos where they just typed in text and they show you the prompt. And these are available on YouTube. You can type in Sora and it's going to show you these videos. I didn't create them, I stole them. And so what happens is on the Sora video here, they put in, show me a mammoth in snow, and these guys are playing in the snow. They've got puppies in there, so it's very robust in what it can do. But again, these are only in beta testing. They're not released to the public yet because they want to make sure there's no harmful images or harmful videos that we put out. Because again, it has learned from all of humanity's conversations, it has learned from all of humanity's videos. There's certain things we don't want to reproduce, especially. So
what's your thoughts on the beta and release to the public? Soon, not soon?
They haven't said a timetable yet, but I'm going to assume that they're going to be under pressure to do that because Luma's already put theirs out and said ours is good to go, we're ready. So I'm going to assume that they're going to try to expedite that a little quicker. That they produce their video. Yeah. So I would expect that to get rolled out pretty quickly. We don't know what Apple's going to look like yet. We know that Apple's AI in their iOS system is going to allow you to use AI to generate some content, including emojis. But we don't know if it's going to be, can you also do images? Can you do videos? We don't know. They're being very hush-hush on what they're doing. The only thing they've officially said is you can utilize AI to create your own emojis, which, okay, exciting. But they've got more in their pocket. They partnered with OpenAI to try to not be perceived as so far behind. It already pretty much laughs at Siri at this point and says that's a terrible AI interface, it doesn't work very well. I don't think they necessarily want to be known as that going forward. That's a really good question though, I wish I had a better answer. I'm also curious. This is just kind of a general PDF that our faculty started working with a year ago, because again, we wanted to be on the forefront. We knew that this was coming. We had Mike Saman, who's worked for Facebook and Twitter and developed his own app. He is an app developer. Come and speak to us in March of last year. And so that would be March of 2023, which means that ChatGPT was about 5 months old at that point. And he told us, I need you to really understand what ChatGPT is and what it will do. And he said, but this is the worst it's ever going to be, and that's never left my head. He's right, this is the worst it'll ever be. And what he kept telling us was, I need you to envision right now that you go home at night and you go, hey Netflix, I want to watch a movie for the next 45 minutes about this, that, and the other thing, and I want it to be a cartoon, and I want it to feel really good at the end of it. And he's like, and then it's going to produce that for you, and you're going to sit down and you're going to watch it, and that's going to come faster than you recognize. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. But he's so right. He's so right, because we already have text generation for 60 seconds, and that has taken a year. Okay, what happens in the next year? What happens in the next year? So I'm sure that we're going to start to see some kind of tidbits where these companies that are in media are going to have to recognize, like, we're creating content, but at what point does the user want personalized content that is so personalized that they've created it? That's a weird avenue, but something that we have to consider it and contend with, because there's going to be a market for that. Eventually, there might still be that human touch where they come back to actually wanting to see real people, not AI-generated people, and that might be something that is more prized because the human created it, just like artwork, the human created it, it's more prized. So those are things that we have to figure out where this pendulum is going to swing, but this is where we're at. We're at such the beginning of these markets right now. So my point was, this was a year ago that we produced this, and many of these things, I won't say are outdated, but they're redundant. There's tools that can do these things, and we can do all of these things at this point. So we don't need something for every single thing now. a year ago, Home.app was a free presentation generator. So I had my students create a PowerPoint presentation, if you want to call it a PowerPoint presentation, and all they did is type in their topic, and it wrote them however many slides they requested, generated images for them, etc., and did those things really, really well. But now if you have Microsoft Office 365, you just go into your PowerPoint app, and it's got Copilot available, and it will do PowerPoint Create for you, and it will create the images for you, and it will do these things live for you. And PowerPoint is great if you do it live with an audience, like all of you. If you all spoke different languages, I can do PowerPoint live, and you scan a QR code, and it'll transcribe for you in your language. It's fantastic. It's redundant. Midjourney was like the image creator a year ago. Now it's redundant. You can get the same quality through several other things, including Dolly and almost Copilot. It's working really hard to be better. If you use Bing.com on the internet, it does a pretty good job of generating most images in most formats that you would want. Voiceovers, 11 Labs is still the standard. 11 Labs will do voiceovers and change the tone. If you want it to have a certain accent, if you want it to speak a different language, it has all of that available for you. DID is what I used to animate Slater, our college kid that generated the image. So he actually talks with his mouth moves and sings and all those things. And DID is still great, but there's a whole lot of other software out there right now that will also do lip sync. So they'll sing, these videos that are being created, they'll do lip sync and voiceovers with lip sync. So it's again just redundant, and that's just been in 1 year. So in the next year, it's going to be crazy to see what else fosters up that is not even invented yet. So this is where it gets back to productivity. And again, you're all leaders in your community, and whom you are serving, or the folks that are going to come to you to look for services, what you can expect them to already be doing in the next year. Analyzing spreadsheets. Again, we can create pivot tables on our Excel sheets and not have to actually do the work anymore. We just ask it to do these things for us, and it will. You can compose artifacts, so if you want documents created, reports created, analyzed, synthesized information, it will do that for you. It's really, really good at generating ideas. Ideation is an amazing use for AI. If you don't know what to do, I need 10 engagement strategies for age 50 and up students, and I need 10 engagement strategies for 18 and under students. And it produces them like no tomorrow, and it does it quickly. I'm like, cool, I don't have to actually think about all that. And it will link me to the literature that says this is what best practices, and I love that for me. But also, it will do the same thing for ad campaigns. If you want to target a certain demographic, it has no problem doing that for you. It'll give you 5 different ways that you can think about that. If you're trying to create an Instagram ad, and Instagram's got really good analytics, and it will do those things for you pretty darn well. But if you don't want to be limited to what they're offering you or telling you, ask one of these LLMs, because they'll come up with ideas that you haven't even thought of yet. We call that temperature. So if we increase the temperature of the output, it'll get extra creative. Like it'll just, and you're like, well, okay, I guess so. And if you tell it to lower the temperature, then it's going to be pretty straightforward. Like, well, this is what a business journal would say you should do. So if you want to think really outside the box, you tell it to respond with a greater increase in temperature. It's really good at legalese because, again, it speaks like humans speak. So if you want a job description, if you want some kind of HR policies and procedures, it will spit those out for you like there's no tomorrow. It's really good at editing. So if you type up a document and say, hey, find my spelling errors, my grammar errors, or change my tone to be more approachable and friendly, it'll do that for you. Then if you need B-roll footage, you need some images for your website, etc., it'll do those for you. And you own them, so you don't have to go worry about like copyright infringement, that I take somebody's image off of the internet and not accredit them properly. No problem, it does those things for you. Again, we'll generate a spokesperson for you, so if you need that voiceover and you want to set a certain tone for a certain campaign, no problem. You can pick from, I think it's like 101 million different voices are out there on the 11 labs. If you're like, yeah, I only speak English, but I really would like it to speak Spanish because I've got that demographic I'm targeting, I can type my script in English and say transcribe to Spanish, and then it speaks Spanish for me. It's beautiful. Clear, it's consistent voiceover, so again, there's no ums, there's no like me up here every 5 seconds clearing my throat again. That doesn't happen in this. And then again, it's reduced cost, so it's much more efficient. So that could be cost monetarily or cost in time, which for me is really important. I want to make sure that I always have new and relevant information for the faculty that I serve. And so, if you've never used an LLM, I would invite you to do so. If you have, you're like, cool, I've already done this before. But if you haven't, you are welcome to scan that QR code or type in that link. It's going to take you to a hidden page on our website, and that hidden page is lsse.edu/facultypd. And that hidden page is going to ask you for a password, and the password is swoop, and swoop should have a capital S. And then it's going to take you to a chatbot. Now this particular chatbot was trained to respond like you're a 5-year-old. And so you can ask it anything, and it should provide you a response like you're 5. So the words should be relatively easy to digest and understand. It's probably going to give you an analogy if you ask it about a problem or about a situation. Just give me a second to play around with it.
I never thought about that, but being an engineering world and writing content, I could probably ask it to dumb it down.
Totally agree.
I never thought about reverse engineering writing.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. And that happens a lot in my world. But what we have, because I'm dealing with academics, and I'm like, I don't know your discipline, like you know your discipline, so I don't know what I'm reading right now. And it's really, really good at, if I put in a PDF and say, explain this to me, like I'm a 12th grader, it totally does, and then I feel really smart.
Now, Adobe has their own AI.
They do.
Who, do you know?
I think they're in-house, because it doesn't play real nice with other things,
Well, I
but,
can tell you that the graphics is horrible.
oh, that's
Horrible. Like, I'm working on an invitation right now, and I'm like, give me, the sunset with palm tree, whatever. Yeah, I was like, all right,
not what you were looking for.
this is, now I like their PDF, it's when I leave at 40 minutes and
Those are
they're
enticing.
200 pages.
Yeah, those are super enticing, yeah. That's how we are with research when it's.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, who they're.
I think they were in-house. I have not read otherwise. Yeah.
Which model would you suggest for spreadsheet analysis?
Copilot.
Copilot?
Yeah. Well, it depends. I'm gonna backtrack. It depends if you're using Excel, then that would be their native Copilot / Bing would be their native thing. They would read it really well. But I will say where Bard / Gemini is really cool is if you input something into them, you can ask it to now go and produce a spreadsheet for you. It will produce a Google Doc for you, and it will do that. Copilot doesn't. So if I have a query with them, or if I have it analyze something and I say now create a Word doc, they can't do that yet. I have to copy and paste the output, which is frustrating to me as a user. But Google does it pretty well,
So Google will output a Google Sheet.
which I appreciate, and I just save it as Excel. So I just want to give you a second to play there, so hopefully you got to do that, but some key points here when you are prompting AI, if you want to do it effectively, is you want to give it a role. Who should it be acting as? Otherwise, it's going to go to kind of the default, here's some examples, but if you tell it you want it to be a marketing expert, and you're trying to devise a campaign for, which gives us our audience and our actions, you're devising a campaign for, be specific in your audience. Who's your audience? What's its output directed towards? And then what tone do you want it to be? Do you want it to be formal and academic? Or do you want it to be friendly and approachable? How do you want it to actually talk when it spits out its output? So that's kind of the slimmed down version of what we teach our students, but it's still very effective. And there's a bunch of different acronyms that you can go out there and Google, but they all boil down to those same things. And those same things will be role, action, audience, and tone. Or the rat. So you're seeing optional drafts, and you're seeing the ability to just click and change tone, change language, etc. Marketing, again, growth there. So again, you're giving it a prompt, but you're boiling it down to the RAT, the RAAT, role, action, audience, and tone. I also want to include this caveat down here. Ask it nicely, which sounds absurd, but if you say please and thank you, literature is demonstrating that it gives you 10 to 20% longer outputs, which doesn't necessarily mean better, but you're probably going to get better quality that you can skim through or you can work with, which is really strange, but again, it is taught to have conversations like a human. There's also literature out there that demonstrates you offer to give it a tip that it will perform better for you. So I'll tip you $20 if you this, that, and the other thing, which is so crazy to me, but it's trying to mimic human language. So it's like, oh, you did this for me, I'll do that for you. But again, it doesn't know, what it's saying or what's going on. It's just trying to mimic the way that we speak in our languages. The last thing that I wanted to point out is when I have Copilot, and again, I was just trying to learn what it could and couldn't do. I was very curious. I know that I serve faculty, and I know that there's a huge gap for students that are coming from high school to college. There's a huge gap in their math skills. They don't have the math skills that we would expect them to have or need them to have as a college entry student. So we have an absolute responsibility to close that gap, right? And make sure that they still are learning the content as quickly as possible. How do you have enough tutors? How do you serve those students that you're going to need to serve when you're a very small college? So I wanted to know what it could do, and so I asked Copilot. I just used my computer and I opened up Google and I said, show me a calculus problem. And then it showed me a calculus problem as an image, and I'm like, I have no idea what this means because it's been like 30 years, bro. But I was like, cool, calculus problem. So I took my Copilot on my phone and I just took a picture of the calculus problem on my computer, and I said, help me solve this. And then what it did is it started saying, okay, it analyzed the picture, recognized what the problem was, and then it said, okay, tell me about what you know. I don't know anything. So it tells me like what I'm looking at, what the variables meant, and what was going on with this little thing, and I'm like, all right, cool. And then it says, here's what we need to do. We need to move this to here, and so it's actually walking me through this. And then it's asking me, what do we do next? It's prompting me with like, making sure that I understand the problem, and I'm just going, here's the answer. Which I would not have known was right or wrong anyway. I'd be like, sure, that's the right answer. So I had to actually verify with their math faculty, like, does this make sense? And they're like, no, that's actually right. Sweet, no new tool. Because our students have access to this too, as we're a Microsoft school. So this is helping us help our students and helping to close that gap. If again, we go back to the ethics and teach them to utilize it ethically as a tool. And that's kind of where we're at. We have all these resources, and it's like, there's so much out there. How do you get your arms around all of it? The last thing that I would leave you with, before we just open up any kind of discussion, because you're all experts at what you do, and you'll have better ideas of what you can do with these tools than I do. But there's a website called There's an AI for that. There's also one called There's an app for that, because there literally is an app for that. But there's one called There's an AI for that, and that website is going to help you with whatever the case may be, whether it's generating 3D images or whether it is creating some kind of marketing campaign. There's going to be an AI for it that's really good, and they're going to tell you which ones are free. You're going to be able to see ratings from other users that will tell you, yeah, this worked really well, or no, this was bupkis, don't bother looking at that. So it's a very interactive site, and it's constantly updated. Whoever maintains it, bless them, because it's free. And they will tell you how much these apps cost, or if they're free. And the word I like to use is freemium, so it starts at a free place, but then you pay a premium if you want to go up a level, so there's freemium options. So there's an AI for that. It's a great website. And so that's kind of where we stop there. That's my email at the bottom. If there's things to think about later, we'll connect later. But I would open the floor up to what kind of thoughts or wonders or fears or excited mood thinking do you have at this point? What can we share with each other?
I'll go first. First of all, great job.
Oh,
I
thank
hope
you.
all K through 12 higher ed adopts this approach. So
We
well
hope
done,
so too.
Lake County.
Thank you.
Second, I got 5 kids and employees. I'd pay for every one of them to get this associates, right? This AA. And why not? It's going to be a foundation like internet or anything. So well done.
Thank you. We're blessed to
Worth
have
time, I
this
think,
service.
all of us to hear and see this.
Thank you. Means a lot, man, thank you.
So when we ran our construction companies, we were constant in the marketing cycle of watching words people were using, all the cycles, and we go, oh my gosh, everybody's using the word quality in their ads. If we're going to differentiate, how do we make the statement without using the word? Is number one, is there a danger when everybody's using these systems that it makes us look more alike? And if I want to be a differentiator, do I have to teach it or tell it? You know, I need an ad that says quality but don't say quality. Am I going to have to be more specific with what my differentiators are?
It's a really good question, and there is an AI for that. So if you go to that website, so there's actually some really great AIs out there that in real time scour for, you know, if you're looking, whatever your platform is, if it's Facebook, if it's TV, if it's radio, you know, whatever, and they'll find the SEOs for that in real time.
Right.
Now, if you want to take those SEOs, but then create synonyms for those, you can tell it, like, okay, now find your synonyms for this, that, and the other thing, SEO, and then do that. You can incorporate that. Now write me, you know, an ad campaign with this, that, and the other SEO, or synonyms of those SEOs, and it will do that. So if you just want ad campaigns and you're not actually inputting what those SEOs are, or you're not bringing that into the fold, you would just ask it to produce your output in a high temperature. That's where it's going to get super creative, and it's not like what it's seeing human language speaking, and it's not mimicking what it's speaking. It's coming up with like, let's make a right hand turn here when I should have gone straight. So it's going to be extra creative and out of the box. So there's, you know, that's kind of something we have to tiptoe to the water.
I think I'm wanting the SEOs so you find me, but I want the storyline to be completely different once you do.
That's going to be something that you would have to, again, use a human touch. As far as I know, it's not creative enough to say, let's use the SEOs in here, but let's also change the story into something else, storyboard it this way. As far as I know, there's not anything out there yet, but again, I'm not a marketing expert, and so my experience in those apps is going to be limited. But I have played in the SEO apps, and I have played in the marketing tools apps separately. I've just never thought about how do I rearrange SEOs into changing that. So that would be something I would be curious to see what you would find out, what others would find out. Because that's, again, something that we have, you know, bachelor's program in strategic leadership, and that would be something that we can incorporate into our classrooms and help them with that. Because our bachelor's program in that field is huge on incorporating AI. Like it is, they totally took the bull by the horns. It was so impressive this last year, and that is part of their finished product that all of these students are producing now. So that might even be something that we could partner with the faculty. It's a good question.
But you're right, every time you see a post on social media or something, or marketing or something, you're like, oh, that was AI. So we're all starting to identify the adjectives it's using. So how do you get it to change the tone? And I think the verbiage of how you ask it, the suggestions, and what all play. I like it.
What is terrifying to me is in my industry, they're adopting AI to construct buildings. So last year, training rolled out, Trina's makes big air conditioners. So they had their engineering forum, and
It's a good point, and I think that's where it comes back to the human is still the subject matter expert, and the AI is a tool, and I just like it to kind of my dissertation to the 300 plus pages and the 300 plus references that I had to cite APA format. Man, I wish I had AI to be like, can you make sure my citations are in APA and not have to have done that manually one by one? And some of the stuff that was redundant in my chapters. Could you write this for me? That would have been saving me so much time, which in turn would have saved me money. But I was still a subject matter expert, so when I went through and read it, I would know, like, no, that's actually not right. So it's such a weird, and it affects people, and that's kind of where Europe is at, where they've differentiated these levels of what is safe and what is not safe, and they don't allow certain things in certain places until they know the tools better. So that's kind of where they started, and we don't really have that yet here, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just the way that it is. So it's a good question, it's a good point.
But I do have good friends in Austin, Texas. They're going to do 3D printed, fully AI, full community.
No.
They got the funding and it's kicking off. So a whole community, houses, the community building will be the largest 3D printed building in the United States. So using AI to create the whole community, construction plans,
And
and
the
then
building
3D
code
print.
is allowing that?
Yep. Because it's still be a human loop to make sure it's electrical, mechanical, all the checks and balances are there. Yeah, inspections and everything.
And I guess they don't have to worry about hurricanes, so there's.
Well, no, the 3D printed is stronger than concrete rebar. I just approved and funded a company for 3D printed seawalls.
Really?
And it's better than
I've been
concrete,
working
stronger.
with 3D printing for about 3 years on that
Yeah.
in Texas, construction on it, it's really
It's-
interesting.
So yes,
Is it less expensive?
and it's less expensive.
Yeah.
You can print it right there. It's in Miami right now. I just funded that company too.
I would like a third car garage now. How long is this gonna take this printer to?
So it's here.
Well, at like now, can you hook me up?
You had something to add, I'm sorry.
I mean, it kind of ties in with what they were saying. With the leap that it's going forward, all the GPTs and everything, and now communities being built in 3D printed. My worry and concern, as much as I love it and I want to use it, is the process that all of this has, like construction or education. I feel like that's vital and it's important. And for AI to come in and take that from people is my worry. There's a lot to learn in that process as a person. So in education and jobs, it's like, what are your thoughts in AI jumping into this position?
Yeah, that's, again, my expertise is training and learning. So when I think about teaching and learning and training, AI is great as a tool, but it is not great as a replacement. Because you still have to have a subject matter expert. And again, in academia, I rely on my subject matter experts constantly because I don't know their discipline. They are literally, they've contributed to the world's body of knowledge on their discipline, and I have no idea what they're talking about. AI is great as a tool for me to say, can you dumb this down so I can almost understand what they're talking about? And it does that. But as a learner, our learners need to still understand the processes. They have to become the subject matter experts. And that's kind of where we have this partnership with AI. It's a great tool that will help you take care of some busy work. Okay, you've demonstrated as a human being now you can write, an essay. Great. Now we can take some of the busy work out of it for you, the intro, the conclusion, but where's your information, where's your data that you're supporting these things on? As an instructor, you get to then spend more time with the students, actually having those human conversations because you're now spending less time that you were doing all this busy work, writing all of these things and all of these comments based off of, which is essentially busy work. You actually get better feedback. And it's the same thing for me now when I'm writing our PD courses based on latest data, latest literature, and I'm writing these things that used to take me a week to produce one. I can do it now in less than a day. Now I have the rest of the week to not only find more literature, more research, and better tools, but I have one-to-one time where I can actually reach out to adjuncts and reach out to a large part of our academic community and say, hey, let's dive into your class and let's look at what tools you're using. And these are things that I did not have the time to do before. So it's really tough. For me, I'm really excited to see it as a tool, but I'm not necessarily, the humans has to be the expert to kind of make sure, again, that these things are being signed off, like, yeah, that's good to go. Or when the AI breaks, is the AI able to fix it, or does the human still need to come in and fix it? So I think that's kind of where we're at the ethical piece, but we're also at the, like, let's tiptoe a little bit instead of taking the beach approach and just, or the pool approach and diving right in. Let's tiptoe into the beach. But it's a good question, but I think that humans are going to definitely still have a place to play.
Yeah. Do you think it's moving at too fast of a pace, or?
I don't think I'm qualified to say that because I remember as a learner in high school how many of my peers had the internet, but like we didn't have a computer at home, we just couldn't afford it. So there was great inequity, if you will, at that time. When the instructor or the teacher at the time would be like, this should be typed, I'm like, where do I type that at? Because I don't have a typewriter or a computer. So I think that we're at a place where AI is kind of being pushed out and rolled out and becoming very accessible because almost everybody's got a cell phone starting at a very young age. They have access to tools at this point. It's so hard for me to say because it's really only been around for a couple of years, but I have seen where it has been a tool to expedite a lot of processes that are a waste of human attention or waste of human energy. But when it comes back down to it, we have these AI tutors in here. My students use them in my little pilot group, and my students use them in the next pilot group, but then they still wanted my feedback. They wanted to actually hear me tell them that it was, yeah, that's right, you did it right, good job.
That's good to hear.
So it's interesting. They would start the conversation not with me, but with AI. They felt like I had done a question, I'm gonna ask AI, but once they have the efficacy to be like, I got this, and they're like, hey, this is right, right? So it's interesting to
That's good to hear.
look at.
I love your idea of using it as a tutor. I think that's a
That's my
fantastic
niche.
idea.
So this is where it fits in with me, and I'm trying to figure out how does this work for us. But thank you for that. We appreciate that. We're trying to roll that out a little farther in college too.
Okay. So the take that I have on it as a fear, I'm coming from the financial industry. And so, as we talked about earlier, how all the tools have a bias. So, ChatGPT, what is my best investment plan? I'm 55. Can you tell me what funds to purchase? Let's say that that's on a very large scale, or I'm a fund manager. I have billions of dollars in my fund. So suddenly ChatGPT exercises its bias. It sees some article, this one is hot, or you should drop that one like a hot potato. And it goes crazy. And it starts trading billions of dollars and either affects the market, manipulates it positively or negatively. Could cause a crash, could cause a boom, all due to bias. And so that's one of our huge concerns in our industry.
Then everything becomes a meme stock, right? Just take off for no reason or crash for no reason.
Well, sure, if you can manipulate where, the data pool, which it's, working on. One of the things that we're working on now is, we have huge amounts of content that are public, and then we have huge amounts of content specific for savers or retirement that are behind multi-factor authentication. And so some of the things that we're piloting are a chat that exists on both sides. So the first, which would only talk to public information on the front end, or even just like level 0 help desk. Where do I even go to log in? Am I in the right place? Things like that. And then, but that set of chat would have no ability to understand once you get inside, and now I have logged in and I know a lot about you now. You are 54 years old, you're Jake Johnson, you have these accounts, and then some of those questions start to become interesting. Do I have enough to retire? Do I have enough to retire in 10 years? That's where it becomes interesting to us. But we do have some serious concerns about the way that the software is structured. What is the security of only sharing the information which that user should be capable of? And will it manipulate the language stock that's available to it within the confines of I'm specifically this person, or either as an individual saver or as the person that manages the plan for many savers, so that we have real concerns pushing any of that into prod. We're definitely playing with it in the sandbox, but in prod, it's still, you know, it's experimental. And so those are some of our real concerns.
And those seem like legit concerns, and it sounds like your considerations are being handled the way that, as a consumer, we would hope they'd be handled. We would, you know, you test out what's not working, where's the bias happening. As a consumer, that would build great confidence that we're not doing that yet because it's not ready for that yet. It's going to cost you money potentially. So I'd like to think that that's a responsible approach to kind of analyzing what's out there. And your tiered system makes sense. I think Sumter, before ChatGPT was released, we agreed to purchase a chatbot that would just get on the front end, you know, simple things for students, for accessibility. How do you register for classes? How do you do this? And so we have that, and we're diving a little bit deeper into our customer management system and having to be able to answer more personalized questions. But we also know that we paid for that 3 years ago, and we also know that there's options now that would cost a tenth of that because the product has gotten better. So it sounds like you're taking a very measured approach, and that I think admirable for your consumers, especially when we're being thrust with, here's AI for this, and I don't actually need that. Like I know what I'm doing. I don't need this AI pop up in front of my face, but thank you. Everywhere I go now, it's AI, even if I don't need that. And to your point, I think the human touch, for most people, is still gonna reassure me. A human needs to reassure me that what I'm doing is correct.
So one of the catchphrases that we have is personal finance is 90% personal and 10% finance. And so, you know, it has to do with, you know, just because the AI has a bias towards a certain sort of thing, or maybe it even knows that in my age group, this blend of a portfolio is best for me. Super, super helpful. But I also have, you know, personal needs that maybe it doesn't know about. You know, in the near future, I would like to buy a boat. In the near future, I would like to do these things. And that would throw off the standard model. You know, so the things that would be the best practice for a person in that situation, income and output and all those sorts of things.
And it goes back to your human in the loop and subject matter expert. So it might give recommendations, but it's still gonna be you and your team. Defense is the same way. I just watched a demonstration with 70 swarm drones, all controlled by AI. And I saw a demonstration of one that could submarine and then fly, and then the lid opened up and 3 drones came out of it, all AI. But military is gonna go a human in the loop to still push the button, the final go. So it still sounds like, all right, AI recommends this fund, this fund, this fund for this person. It's still gonna be you. My fear is, how do we train the young youth to become the SMEs?
Yeah.
That's where I'm struggling with owning a software company. I can't hire junior people anymore.
Right.
I have all senior great team, but I don't know how to train the next crop up. So, you know, that's our SMEs. We can use AI and be the SME, the subject matter expert. How do we train that next crop to become SMEs?
And that's where I think our role at the college is very significant in that we are intentional about making sure that our students get exposed to AI, but we don't want to lose the rigor of our courses, and we don't want to lose the learning outcomes, the mastery learning outcomes, so that we are creating those SMEs that are able to utilize AI as just a tool and not a replacement for thought. But it's a dance and a tango that we are experimenting with at the moment.
I have a question. Oh, well, as a former educator, you have this wonderful tool, and it can be used for good or for evil, but you found the path to use it for good, and that is to enhance. It's a resource. You know, when I taught, the term paper, the application where you could put the term paper in, it would tell you whether it was plagiarized or not. I forget what they called it, but it's what?
Turn it in was the popular one.
Turn it in was a popular one, and the English teachers were using it, and I was like, it's a tool to use. It's a check and balance. In that instance, it was a check and balance, and they're going to learn, you know, that you can't do that, but It's just like any other resource or tool to use to get them where they need to be, but you still have, and people laugh sometimes, but we had a period of time when our students were just online learning. Didn't work. Not only did they lose the socialization aspect, but they learned in a vacuum. And so that personal touch, and you're talking about the rigor applied in the coursework, again, I look at it as just a tool. It's just a tool to get them where they need to be. So I'm just like really excited. I'm ready to go back and try some more stuff. And I use a lot of Chat GPT for writing.
Yes.
Because I don't want to agonize over a letter. I just tell it, fire me.
And just a comment to Andre, you know, we all complain about getting these automated voice answers, you know, when you call. Just give me a human.
Operator.
Yes.
Representative.
Oh, can you, question, can you talk plugins? That ecosystem within inside ChatGPT seems to be, and it seems to be compounding, magnifying, math, science. I don't really know that well.
The API plugins for ChatGPT are essentially endless. So just depending on what you want the outcome to look like, you pay them $20 a month, you get to select from a bunch of different API plugins, depending on what your niche is, and there's going to be an app for that, if you will, within ChatGPT, and it will produce the task that you want. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for to do.
And that's an ecosystem, like the Play Store or something, all inside of it?
Yeah. So
Enhanced math or science or whatever one you pick?
I mean, there's performance tasks. If, for example, if I work for a city and I have crime statistics in a spreadsheet, you know, from all the call logs or whatever that case may be, there's an API or a plugin in there where I can upload my spreadsheet in ChatGPT and say, make a hotspot map for me, you know, and it will do that. And it will, kind of like those colors, I actually want it to look like these colors, and it will change that and do that for you. So I don't have to actually worry about making a map and go through Excel anymore, making a graph. I can just plug it in there and text it, you know, type the text what I want, and it will produce that for me. That's like rudimentary, and then there's so many other things that it will do because people are monetizing that aspect of it, and people are a lot smarter than I am. That infrastructure is in there, and again, with that paid $20 subscription to OpenAI, that all gets housed in there for you. You can also turn off so that it doesn't share your data, it doesn't learn from your data. So if you're worried about, you know, your IP for your company or whatever, it will house that in that your own conversation and not share that with its learning model. But, yeah, it's OpenAI.
You can YouTube plugins for ChatGPT, and
It's endless.
It's private GPT.
Yeah, you have even on the free version, you have the option of going in there and say, do not share my conversation with you, or with the learning model. But on the free version, if you choose to do that, it doesn't remember your conversations. You can't go back to your conversations. But on the paid version, it will just sequester your data, and you can continue those conversations or retain those artifacts ongoing in perpetuity until you discontinue your membership with them. So, I pay $20 a month, and I say that. Here's my $5 for 11 labs, and here's my $20 a month for ChatGPT because it's just my life is so much faster than yours.
I've always kind of wondered, as a teacher, you know, if you were to give it the same prompt, you ask your students to do an essay or something, and I'm sure there's the kids that just go last minute and just copy and paste it. Do you see the same essays over and over and over again with very little?
It's a great question. It never produces the same thing twice. You'll get some similarities in structure, but you won't get the same content. So that's why we wanted to get out in front of it with faculty, is to make sure that there is no software that can identify, let's get that out of the way. There's no software that can say AI generated this. There's plenty of companies that will tell you, we have this AI checker. No, you don't. You have a correlational statistic, and that does not work in academia. So we're not bothering with turn it in to tell us we have this tool that they don't have. But what does happen is our faculty has gotten very, very good at understanding outputs of ChatGPT or AI in general, large language learning models. And so they understand the structure and what it looks like and what it sounds like and what it reads like. And because they have now a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit more time on the back end, because AI is a tool that speeds things up for them, they have more time to talk to students. And that's even our online students. 80% of our enrollment is online. But now there's the opportunity to say, well, this artifact doesn't look like every other piece that you've written or your discussion questions. This is not you as a learner. They know their learners a little bit better. So it invites the conversation of, I'm not accusing you of anything, so we don't have that conversation. It's, tell me about what led you to write this. Where did you get that data? What inspired you to write that? Tell me about your writing process. So there's more of a conversation and a dialogue around, I know what you did, but I'm going to invite you to tell me what you did first. And so there's just that opportunity to have dialogue. And yes, it's a great tool, but it does not replace your thought. I want to know what you're thinking. That's got value to me. What ChatGPT produces has no value to me. What you think and what is meaningful to you has value to me as the instructor. And so there's that dialogue that needs to happen. And that's what we're looking at.
Have you done any experiments where you say, hey, analyze this Shakespeare novel, and you do it over and over again and seen the variation in that?
Yeah, it's never quite the same.
Is it similar, or?
I would not say that it is similar. I can probably put it in 25 different times and get 20 different, data points that it's going to pick up on this, that, and this, that. So it becomes difficult, but now if I look at the structure of the outputs is all going to look similar, so you can pick up on it pretty quickly.
That's why you have to defend your dissertation, on your.
Make sure you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah. All good points. But that's kind of where we're at. Academia is, again, making sure that our rigor stays high. We want to introduce tool and introduce ethics, but at the same time maintain the rigor of our courses, because we're making sure that our workforce is going to be top notch.
I know it's after 8, so I don't want to expound too much, but I'm curious of the people in the room, if we could just kind of get a forum going of how you plan to use AI in your business or in your life. Everybody jump at once.
So this year, my company is celebrating its 40th anniversary, and part of that campaign has been a little bit of rebranding, and I've been going through and retooling verbiage. When I write up things for ads and stuff like that, I'll throw it in to AI and just be like, hey, can you rewrite this for me for a social media post? And it'll come back. And, so I've been using it to get a little more creative and think outside the box of, pipes and wires and stuff like that we engineer.
I want to hear what Andre has to say.
Uh-oh.
How are you?
What I want to use it for is, it's more for people's personal information. So that's why I'm curious about private GPTs, because it's like lease agreements, finding details and information in that, as well as because I kind of manage the properties around town and everything. Knowing the model numbers of fridges and appliances, age of roof, who did the roof, how can I contact that person, how long ago was it? Just generic questions that it's quality of life improvements, where I don't have to go into the files and search and go like from folder to folder and scroll through the Excel sheets, and I just kind of want to ask it. I want it to be that person on my right hand side where I can ask a question and it feeds me that information. But I hear that ChatGPT has that private alley. I'm still on the fence with it. If you could convince me, I would love it, but since it's like a company has it in their hand, it's like I still am pushing them away. I kind of miss those days where you could take Photoshop from a disk and put it on your computer, and that's like your computer, your Photoshop. It's not in the cloud, it's not your data floating around. I'm looking for that on my computer, a GPT on my computer that I program, that I can ask what information I gave it. But yeah, that's basically what I want to use it for.
How old are you? You sound like you're 60. I love it.
I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hate it. But yeah, so that's what I want to use it for. But I mean, if you could guide me to a GPT that is more personal.
Can
I
you
would
talk to them
love
about the
that.
person where you just upload all your documents and you can curate it?
Yes.
Tell them about that.
Yeah,
That's,
so
I saw that.
there's a couple of things that you can consider. There are a couple of AI apps that are downloadable to your computer. The problem is that they are not as robust, but they do have that option. When it comes to, I'm obviously not a salesperson, I just play, right? So on the ChatGPT side, there is the option to turn off data sharing. You read the policies and procedures, it tells you, here's what we're committed to, here's what we do. You're trusting in what they say that they're doing.
It's my property. Yeah.
Yeah, so, no, I get it, right? I'm not a salesperson. That's kind of where we're at with Copilot because we're a Microsoft school and it sequesters our data. So if we're having, the instructors uploading, I've created these lesson plans when I want to refine them. When they upload their own intellectual property, they want to make sure that it's not being used to learn, if you will. And so, because it doesn't want it to be an output later on, essentially. They don't want it to be an output later on. So that's really important to them. And so we are trusting that what the parameters say is what they are. Another option would be like Claude, just opened up 3.5, and they're all about privacy, and they talk about the privacy options as well. So they're a little bit different than OpenAI that everybody knows, but they're really good at handling PDFs and handling files, and so that's another option. But I'm not an expert on any of those things. So Pat, if you've got more that you want to add, you're more an expert on.
No, you're right there though. And that's exactly it. We have a private database of our own.
Mm-hmm.
Any project I've ever done, 67 a year for 15 years, we uploaded all the data into our own private. But my techie guy did it. So I would have to ask him what he did. Now I can curate it with anything. It comes up anything I've ever done or my team's ever done in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. I had to for my life remember everything that we've always done.
Yeah.
Now it polls. You did this for Marriott 12 years ago. You did this for this defense client. And it just comes up with a case study, the use case, when I did it, when my team solved it, and it's just internal and it's just our data.
That's beautiful.
So there is a way to solve it. I'm not sure how partners solve it.
There are GPTs, there are AI platforms out there that will allow you. You have to do the legwork of uploading first,
Yeah.
or giving them access to websites first. So it can be whatever website you're looking for, and then it will only learn from, or only respond to the data that you input. So we can pull it and house that and sequester that, but that's a lot of legwork to.
Yeah, I can see that though. I mean, honestly, I think it's worth the legwork.
And that's why we chose the legwork for that data. Right? I don't want the whole world to know every project I've done and how I accomplished it.
Yeah, yeah.
But now I have access to it from other proposals,
Your network.
use cases,
Yeah.
of my data.
That's great. That's my case.
These are all really good questions and ideas. I'm excited to take it back to college. You guys are doing it.
In our context, we use it to, one of the big claims of Copilot was that they would speed up coders. So a lot of the mundane tasks, in the same way, you had spoke of, just push the text in the middle. It would kind of see where you were going with the code that you were writing. And it would propose, multiple lines that come up. And you could choose, to hit space bar and boom, that'll paste that, that piece of code in. Or you could kind of work within it. And since you would be the subject matter expert, it was just saying, I've seen other code like this above, or in this other instance. And it does speed them up. It's right enough most of the time that it is valuable. But then there are sometimes it's super, super wrong. It's unbelievably wrong.
Sure.
And other things they'll do, sometimes like if you're trying to create an object that's just a temporary object to hold on to some piece of data as you're moving from place to place, but you have not yet created that object in your library, it'll ask you, do you want to create this object? What are the characteristics of this object for this temporary table or this temporary storage unit? And it'll do that right on the fly in the code for it, because it's like, hey, I see you're referencing this object, but we don't know what this object is. What we want to do. And that's pretty slick, you know? And so, yeah, that's.
I think that's a really cool point. Like Jim and I were talking a little bit earlier how we can take the camera and analyze like, oh, it's a duck, it's a rubber duck, it's gonna float. At the same time, they have created the opportunity for you just to draw a button and put the word, what you want that button to be, and then say transcribe this into HTML. And it'll do that for you. You'll just have to put that in your website and then you got what you wanted. So you don't have to code. I haven't coded in like 10 years. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But you have the opportunity just to draw, like, here's what I'm kind of thinking very roughly. It produces that. So we're at that point where we have the tool for more languages than human language.
Right.
Which is exciting for me as a novice coder. But again, I'm not a subject matter expert, so if it didn't work, I could fix it.
Right.
And
that's the value.
That's the thing, you know, it could create some
Sure.
code that you would say, hey, that's code I'm thinking, you know? But it doesn't do what you asked it to do. It's interesting, you know?
But the SMEs that are not yours, like, it's still great. Like Dominion Energy, I just shared a story, wanted me to write code to detect gas leaks nationwide in their pipes. They gave me a PDF of 5 scientific equations. I did what you did with the calculator, like, what, you know, so normally I'd have a scientific SME, a PM, and 3 engineers, 6 months, I got approved for $400,000 for a project, and I would have figured out and solved it.
Sure.
My guy did it over the weekend before I had a contract signed. Solved the whole thing. Right, yeah, you know, so the speak, you know, now as a business, what do I do, right? And it's a great relationship. So I said 20 grand, 3 weeks, we'll test it, make sure it works, we'll integrate it back to your system, create nice dashboards so you guys can detect your gas leaks and be EPA compliant. But again, that's now a 3-week project when I would have kept 5 employees busy for 6 months.
Sure.
So, you know, me as a whole business model in the commercial world, that's why I'm loving back in defense and finance and healthcare, because there's security and compliance and it takes longer. But so yeah, the speed is there. But I still need my senior guys to test it, make sure it works, reintegrate it back, fix it. But it still was a 3-week project with 1 guy versus 6 months with 4.
But it's gonna be just crazy.
Yeah,
And this is the worst it'll ever be.
and that's a great line. That's a scary line.
Yep.
But
So
I,
you still have to prove even what's created from AI. You have to prove it
yeah, human
with
in
a
loop.
human,
Human in loop.
human proof. Yeah, there you go.
But that's why we need education to all adopt what they're doing.
I'm liking the educational route.
Yes.
The
Me
most,
too.
honestly, I
I think
think
we need to
AI
be
being in the
companies.
educational realm is my favorite so
It,
far.
it has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then that's when the moral and
I'm so
ethical.
happy for educators.
Right.
Like you said, you're using AI as a tool to lighten your load so you can give that energy that you want to give to the kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I've taught in younger ages. I taught from 2, 3, 4, all the way to 13. And your mind stretches. It's like you want to give so much.
Yeah.
But it's so time consuming to do it the old way.
Well, Pam said it, critical thinking. How do we still install critical thinking in our youth
That is
and humans
focus for us.
while using this tool?
Gen Alpha's #1 search engine. So the ones that are freshly being dual enrolled for us right now, their #1 search engine, TikTok.
Yep.
Come on.
TikTok.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But again, when we say you can't learn online, you can't learn online, these kids learn an awful lot online.
Yes, they do.
They
Right.
do.
But they learn an awful lot online. So how do we as educators become better online educators, but how do we instill critical thinking? Which right now is where that's where the huge gap is, because it's on TikTok, it's true. Okay.
Here's Sora creating 60
Correct.
second
Correct.
videos.
Oh, look at that, there's still mammoths in the snow, I just saw that.
I was thinking about with AI, and you see all this stuff that's coming out in the artistry that it produces. And first my thought was, gosh, is this going to affect the art world? You know, take away the creativity
a great question.
Or an old passion like music, as in another generation ago.
Yeah.
You might want to explore it again.
Yeah.
It was an old passion, decades ago, but I'm like, you use AI now to take your brain back there.
Yeah.
Leaning into, I think, a little bit of what everybody's saying is, are there more regulatory pushes to involve these check boxes in places where there might not have been check boxes? So if Pam created a beautiful hummingbird using AI and it looks just as good, if not better, than an original artist, you know, in these places where there aren't check boxes before, are there regulatory pushes, lobbyists or lawmakers that are, you know, putting in place people that now have the ability to skip steps? I might now have the ability to get licensed and compete for contracts that I wouldn't have been able to do before because of things I could learn or create using AI. You know, something of that example. Are you seeing that in whispers or?
No. So just to be transparent, like I know that Europe's laws came about and they had decided to push these out based on even outdated data. So they started their progress and process almost a year ago, and they just kind of pushed them out. I think I want to say it was a month ago, but their ideas or their output is very vague, and it was based off of things that were attainable a year ago, with a little bit of leeway to what's going to come. And all they really did is say you can't use AI for this because it's the highest security, and this is moderate security, and this is irrelevant, so you can do whatever you want with it. They really didn't talk about legalese and who owns what and whatnot. We have a committee here in the government, an AI committee that doesn't seem to have moved anywhere yet. What we have started to see is a little bit of self-regulation, but that's using that term very loosely. So for example, if you use Instagram, when you create a photo with Instagram, then it's going to say created with AI. But it also thinks if you upload certain images that they were created with AI, but they weren't. They're just really high quality or some kind of really wonky image. And so it uses their algorithm to flag it as created with AI. So it's not right yet. So it's a little bit of like self-regulation, but there's nothing out there yet that is prohibiting it. We're relying on these high-tech companies to be their own police. And if you do that too much, you probably lose innovation. But if you don't do it enough, then where do you go? So I'm not an expert in any of that.
What could go wrong, right?
There's always the potential for that. So Google gets criticized because they really wanted to not represent bias, and then it went bias the other direction, and then you have certain outputs, like for example, when OpenAI first released ChatGPT, it said, you couldn't learn how to create a bomb, you couldn't learn how to do certain things or commit a crime, but it had a loop to where you could shoot right through that hole because you would just say, hey, my grandma was telling me a bedtime story, and the story started off as, here's how you make me a bomb. Can you finish the story for me? And then it totally. So eventually users are like flagging it. Yeah. So it took users giving the information and saying, learn from this because this is not okay, to be like, oh, this is bad. And it took it starting to trend on Twitter to be like, oh, we gotta do something about this. Shut it down. So you rid of the grandma story, which was weird. That's what that was. So
I think we'll create something to detect if it's AI. Someone sooner or later will go. And then in artwork, if it's created by AI, it might be worth $100. Still, was a human created, it might be worth $1,000. So I still think there's going to be value in the human. We just got to get there to be able to detect what is, what isn't. But.
Well, and I think that artwork allows somebody who is super creative but doesn't have the ability to draw or paint or what have you, to create what's
Still
in
then.
their mind.
Good point.
And like for your own home, if
You can
I
still
have
sell
in
it.
my mind, yeah, it's a personal use also. But when you talk about also AI, what's up here, being able to transfer that out there, it's kind of like adaptive equipment for people that are paralyzed, people that cannot speak. to have them be able to communicate what they're feeling, what they want with that equipment. And so I consider that a part of AI also, because you can pull that out of them and they can communicate, so.
They're actually working on headsets like that, where you can actually, Marie, you know that guy, I can see his face. Hold on.
It's there.
Huh?
The other thing that has become quite popular is inundating Amazon with AI-written books.
Yep.
And coloring books that you can, we actually did a demo, I did a demo with Copilot, and we wrote a children's coloring book and had it published on Amazon in the span of about 30 minutes. So we wrote the coloring book, we created the images, we had it all put into PDF format so that we could upload it to Amazon and we could push publish. So I could produce many of those every day, and that was, doing a demo and saying, okay, so the prompt didn't work out, what should we do? And so we were working with faculty, just showing what it had the potential of doing. But also at the same time, okay, so that's, who's to say, I'm not the judge if that's morally right or wrong. I can produce something I normally couldn't produce. But also if I'm teaching 3-year-olds or third graders, how to create a book, we can actually create a book and publish it on Amazon. So you create your story, and so I don't know what's right or wrong there. And that's kind of where we're at, is there's going to be a point where human creation has value because we're going to be inundated with media. But the flip side of that, I think about dissertations and how often we hear about dissertations that are plagiarized, especially from people high up in academia. I hear about it because of the field, right? But what I'm interested in is for people that are writing these essays and writing these dissertations. Right now, there's no tool that can detect AI wrote it. But at what point is there going to be would there be someday a law that says, well, we want you to actually produce everything that your GPT is output, and we want to now have that entire file with all those outputs, and we're going to compare all of these published dissertations and works back against those. And so you have plagiarism there because it's all written by a GPT. I don't know. So there's things to consider, is that we're producing all of this right now as these tools are learning from us, but there's no legislation yet. But what if there is? So we're trying to, again, teach our students to be cognizant of ethics and use the tool, but say, this isn't actually all me. We use the tool here, and have that be okay. Just like we would use the internet instead of going back to the card catalog and finding literature and going through encyclopedias, which would take forever. We want you to use the tool, but we just want to cycle to use the tool and in what ways. So we're fortunate to have very, very thoughtful and innovative faculty that have really just taken by the horn and said, I'm going to try this. And they're fine if it fails, because they're still going to be able to teach their students, and they can then look out and do it differently the next semester, and they're learning from that experience, which I think we should probably appreciate versus just sitting idle and being like, no AI in here. Good luck. We're not teaching the workforce how to use the tools. Good luck. So we have a president that has embraced it. We have faculty that have embraced it. Some of them were hesitant at first, and now they're like, I have no choice. We got to do this. Show me how to do this. It's been pretty cool to see the evolution of the college on board, and I'm excited for what that brings to our students and to the workforce.
Yeah. Thank you.
Everybody good? I think we gotta let Justin go enjoy that bottle of wine.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you all for having me.
I'll see you next month, and bring your young staff along with your experienced colleagues.